Hey there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing a review for Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb. But before we go ahead and get on into the review, if you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon so you can be notified every time I post new bookish content. I post new videos every Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, sometimes other days throughout the week. And don't forget to check down in the description box for links to all of my social media, my Buddy Read Discord, and my Patreon. So for this review, I'm going to have a non-spoiler section and then a spoilery section where I just want to discuss some things that stood out to me. So if you're interested in skipping to any one of those sections, check the timestamps down below. For 15 years, Fitz Chivalry Farseer has lived in self-imposed exile, assumed to be dead by almost all who once cared about him. But now into his isolated life, visitors begin to arrive. Fitz's mentor from his assassin days, a hedge witch who foresees the return of a long-lost love, and the Fool, the former white prophet who beckons Fitz to fulfill his destiny. Then comes the summons he cannot ignore. Prince Dutiful, the young heir to the Farseer throne, has vanished. Fitz, possessed of magical skills both royal and profane, is the only one who can retrieve him in time for his betrothal ceremony, thus sparing the Six Duchies profound political embarrassment, or worse. But even Fitz does not suspect the web of treachery that awaits him, or how his loyalties will be tested to the breaking point. Fool's Errand is book 1 in Hobb's Tawny Man trilogy, which continues to follow Fitz Chivalry Farseer 15 years after the events of the Farseer trilogy. I highly suggest starting with the Farseer trilogy because there are tie-ins between this plot and the Farseer plot, as well as characters and just things that are discussed that I feel like would confuse the reader if you hadn't read the first trilogy. Also, there are some tie-ins to the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which I just read a couple months ago, and mild spoilers for that trilogy that you might not realize are spoilers until you go back and read Live Ship. So in my personal opinion, I do think you should read Hobb's books in publication order in order to get the full experience of her world and her plots and her characterization. At the beginning of the book, we have Fitz, and he is living in a cabin in the woods. He wants to live in isolation away from all of the trauma that he had gone through while at Buckkeep Castle when he was younger, and he has taken on an adopted son named Hap that was brought to him by the minstrel Starling. And one day, Chade appears. Yes, Chade is still alive, and he beckons Fitz to come back to Buckkeep, but doesn't really tell him why. And Fitz wants nothing to do with Buckkeep. He just wants to live his simple life. And then more people he knows starts to show up. The Fool shows up out of nowhere, and they kind of rekindle their friendship. And the Fool has definitely changed during his time away from Fitz. Fool has had a lot of experiences. He's gained a lot of wealth. He's now known as Lord Golden, and he's kind of like, I want to say, a celebrity around the Six Duchies because of his wealth and his eccentricism and his looks. So all of these people together convince Fitz to come back to Buckkeep, and the reason that they want Fitz to come back to Buckkeep is that the heir to the throne, Prince Dutiful, has gone missing. And it's rumored that Prince Dutiful might have the wit, just like Fitz does, which is beast magic. And the persecution of witted people in the Six Duchies, even though Queen Ketchaken completely opposes it, people who possess the wit or who are even rumored to possess the wit or even associate with someone who possesses the wit are brutally hunted down and murdered. So there's a lot of violence and persecution going against witted people. So absolutely no one can know that Prince Dutiful might be witted. So the Queen propositions Fitz and the Fool to go after the prince and bring him back, even though they don't know if he's been kidnapped or if he ran away on his own. I will say that this book definitely focused a lot more on the wit magic, so it's been a couple of years since I have read the original Farseer trilogy, and I don't remember the wit magic being delved into as much as it was in this book. I felt like it was definitely expanded. It talked about some things that you could do with beast magic, some taboo things, and the way that Prince Dutiful was practicing his wit magic because he was untrained is kind of what got him into trouble. And we also learn that there is a group called the Piebalds who are trying to track down all of the people that are witted so that they can kind of like rise up against those who are persecuting them. And we find out that there is someone who is leading this group who is not being completely honest. And this person is using the wit magic in a very profane way. As for the characters, I loved being back inside of Fitz's head. He is about 35 years old now, so he's definitely an adult, a very wizened adult. I can't help but feel for Fitz because as a character, like, I just feel like he never catches a break, like, ever. One of the reservations he had about going back to Buckkeep was that people were going to recognize him, and everyone kept telling him that no one would recognize him because it's been 15 years. He has a scar on his face, he has a little bit of white in his hair, and if I'm not mistaken, his nose has been broken and has not healed correctly, so he really doesn't look like the Fitz that everybody remembers. So in my mind, I'm like, even if it's been 15 years, unless you are very disfigured, people are going to recognize you. But if you do have the broken nose, that can really, really change the way you look. So that is believable. But at first, I was a little skeptical. Like, people are going to know it's Fitz chivalry. And also, Fitz is supposed to be dead. Like, everybody thinks that he is dead. Only a handful of people know the truth that he's actually alive. And in order to kind of infiltrate Buckkeep, Fitz has to take on the role of a servant. So he takes on the role of Lord Golden, or the Fool's servant. And I was just like, once again, Fitz can't catch a break. Like, if something happened to Dutiful, literally he is the only Farseer left other than Chade. He could definitely be the heir to the throne. And he is like, has so much power in that sense. Everyone just always treats him so bad, like he's wearing servant's clothes and people are treating him like a servant. And I'm like, if only y'all know who you are talking to. You are talking to a prince and you don't even know it. So Fitz can't catch a break. He just never can. And then we have the relationship between Fitz and Night Eyes, and I remember from the third book that Night Eyes was still very wolf-like, and I feel like in this book he was way more human-like. Like, he would call Fitz an idiot and all this stuff that just reminded me so much of a human. So it seems like Night Eyes had become more human because of the wit bond, and their just relationship dynamic was great. I loved it so, so much. Definitely one of my favorite parts of the book. And then we have the Fool, who was one of my favorite characters from the original trilogy. He is mysterious, he's witty. He has definitely changed since the first trilogy because in the Farseer trilogy, he took on the persona of a court jester who was always making jokes and being witty. But in this book, he's taking on the role as like a noble lord. So he has to put on this front all the time, and it's almost like he's playing a part. He's an actor playing all of these different roles, and it's just very entertaining for me to read. There were definitely some scenes in this book that tested the friendship between Fitz and the Fool and Fitz and Night Eyes that were just completely heart-wrenching. And then the way that HOBB just writes their relationship dynamic is it's just so emotional. We also get a couple of new side characters. We get the huntswoman Laurel, who may or may not have a thing for the Fool. We do get a possible love interest for Fitz named Jenna, who is a hedge witch. And then we have Hap, Fitz's adopted son, who's about 15 years old now, and he has also come to Buckkeep to be apprenticed to a carpenter. So we have all of these different side characters that I think will play bigger roles in the next two books. I can honestly say that this is the quickest I've ever read a Robin Hobb book. I was hooked from the beginning, and it does take about 200-250 pages for the actual plot to start when Fitz goes to Buckkeep and learns that Dutiful is missing and is sent off to find him. That is like the crux of the story. So the first 250 pages are kind of Fitz trying to come to terms with his life and if he actually wants to go back to Buckkeep and kind of trying to reconcile his past with his, current situation and having an adopted son and being isolated. So just know, as with all of Hobb's books, it is a very slow burn plot, but the characters are awesome, the interactions are awesome, and at not one point was I bored or felt like the pacing was not quick enough. So now I just want to talk about some spoilery things. So when I first went into this book, I had completely forgotten that technically, biologically, Fitz is Dutiful's father. So when they started discussing that, I actually had to go back and look at what had happened in the third, Assassin's Quest, the third book in the Farseer trilogy, because I didn't remember that he had done that. And I was like, holy mother, that is his son. That's his biological son. And Fitz is very hesitant to acknowledge that that's his biological son. That's Verity's son. Verity was possessing my body. Biologically, he might be, but by all other means, he's Verity's son. And that's just the most bizarre concept for me to swallow, to be honest. And Fitz even acknowledges, like, I've never had any moment of rearing this boy. I have no claim to fatherhood for him. But I'm just curious if he is ever going to reveal the truth to Dutiful and even Ketcherkin, because Ketcherkin wasn't even kind of aware of what was happening. But I just feel like there's too many connections between them. They look alike. They both possess the wit. It's going to have to come out at some point. So I'm wondering if that's going to happen. I'm also wondering if Fitz is going to kind of take on the role of Chade, because Chade's getting older and he does have an assassin apprentice currently. I just could see Fitz stepping into Chade's role just because he's also a bastard. He doesn't technically have a claim to the throne, and he's technically supposed to not even be alive. So I feel like being a hidden like assassin teacher, as well as teaching Dutiful the wit, which is a magic that people scorn, would put him in kind of like a role like Chade had. And of course, I have to address Night Eye's death. Oh my gosh, that was so heart-wrenching. That was so hard. I teared up a little. Oh my gosh. I really want to know if Fitz is going to bond with another animal. I hope that he does, because I love the interaction between Fitz and Night Eyes, and just, you know, their internal monologue. So I feel like this story wouldn't be complete if he didn't bond with another animal, but I understand it's kind of like losing, you know, a human that you absolutely love, like a spouse, and I don't know if I personally would want to go through that pain again. Okay, you guys, so that is it for my review of Fool's Errand by Robin Hobb. I absolutely love this book. I ended up giving it a 5 out of 5 stars. Let me know in the comments if you have read this book and what you thought of it, and I will see y'all soon in another video. Goodbye! Thank you.